All right, so let's see. We finished talking about complacency, and now we're going to move on to another dirty dozen. Lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. Let's see. Lack of knowledge. Let's see. This is the third one to bend. What's going on? Yeah, I like that. You keep putting the same. Just keep doing it till it. Oh yeah, I remember this one. Okay. So, where did this one come from? So, lack of knowledge. So this particular one, that is not going to buff out. This happened at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia. Maintainers needed to taxi the aircraft from the hangar to the departure gate. So we have mechanics in there. They started the number 1 and 4 engines, and they did not realize the hydraulic pumps were powered by the number 2 and 3. So what is not running right now? Hydraulic pumps. The brakes would have worked until any charged accumulators were discharged. In other words, at first, the brakes are going to seem to work because there's an accumulator. An accumulator is like a gigantic reservoir with pressure in it. And so that keeps pressure in the system until you use it a couple times. And then that pressure goes away, and then suddenly it's like, oh crap. There's no brakes. What are we going to do? And now this airplane's rolling. Let's see. The brakes more than likely lasted until the aircraft is lined up on the monsoon drainage ditch, which is apparently what that is. These poor guys are on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Not my words, the FAs. What's Mr. Toad's Wild Ride?
You don't know? It's from Disneyland.
Disneyland, thank you. Boeing 747 rolled into a ditch and toppled forward, causing severe damage, I'll say. So in no section, the aircraft was totaled. Yes, it was. There were minor injuries to the crew. I think the thing that probably got hurt worse was their pride and then their checkbook.
How much? How much does that cost?
I don't know what a 747 costs these days.
Millions?
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously, probably. I don't know. Nah, I don't even know. It's definitely in the millions.
Billions.
If you have to ask, you can't afford it. All right. So lack of knowledge. We got lack. I'm gonna roll this up. If I scroll too fast, you have to let me know. You'll get used to that. I have certain people in my class who just yell at me. No. Okay, I'm scrolling back. Calm down. Lack of knowledge. So one, lack of experience or training for the task at hand. One, this violates FAR 65.81. Okay, so I want to tell you right now, FAR, it kind of is an older way. That stands for Federal Air Regulations. Technically, it's not right because I think FAR, as I heard once before, some other like farm something used that first, but we use it more. It's another way of saying 14 CFR, which is Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations. So it means the same. You may see FAR, you may see 14 CFR. So Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Who has their fancy brand new FAR AMT? Whip that thing out and tell me, what does FAR 65.81 tell you? So FAR 65, first of all, I want to know, what is FAR 65? That entire chapter deals with one thing. What is that one thing? What's that? Certification of airmen
other than flight crew members.
Certification of airmen other than flight crew members. So it's certification of people with an FAA license, not pilots. All right, so 65 now. So this deals with certification of mechanics. Really, it's not just mechanics, repairmen and stuff like that. But this is where our certification rules come in. Is under 65, under Part 65. And Part 80.81 specifically says general privileges and limitations. You want me to just tell them what it says? You want to read it? I'll tell you. Basically what it says, so we don't have to read the lawyer version of it. It says, yes, you may have a mechanic certificate, And I have to be careful. It's actually a certificate, not a license, and has something to do with tort law. If it's licensed, I guess if you mess up, they can sue the FAA, so it's called a certificate, something like that. I'm not an attorney. I don't even play one on TV anymore. So it says that, yes, you do have a certificate. However, you may not do anything for which you are not properly trained or have tools to do. So I told you that I overhauled engines for a living, okay? But I overhauled engines that had pistons in them. So somebody comes up to me with their King Air. You got a King Air? You'd really be my friend if you did. Now you're just a little bit my friend. So they say, hey, I got a King Air. You want to overhaul my engines? Sure, I've overhauled lots of engines. Okay, King Air has turbine engines on it. So I've never overhauled a turbine engine. Is my license good to overhaul turbine engines? Well, in a way of speaking, it is good for that. Can I do it? Absolutely not, because I have never been trained to do it. So what do I need to do to get trained? Well, I have to have proper supervision working with somebody else. Dallas, right? Have you ever overhauled a turbine engine? No? Okay, well, we'll pretend like she has. So she has, and she's an expert. And so if I do the left engine with her and she shows me how, can I do the right engine? Yeah, if I've been properly trained, have the tools and all that. But if I don't have it, then no, I can't. So you guys, you're brand new, you have your certificate in your pocket, and you have to hold it like this. You know why I have to hold it like that? Because ink's still wet. You got to be careful. You don't want to smear it. So you go out there and somebody says, hey, I heard you just got your FAA, your A&E license, because they're old people, and that's what it used to be called. Could you come and overhaul my engine on my old airplane there? I'm trying to save a few bucks. And you're like, well, I guess I just graduated. I suppose I could. Can you? No. Well, you should be very careful. I'm asking you questions that have multiple answers. I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. I'm going to teach you how to do it. I really am. So I'm going to teach you how to. So I would say you can. You say, well, yeah. And I had Kevin's class, and we actually disassembled, inspected, repaired, reassembled, and test ran a 4-cylinder piston engine. And you got a 4-cylinder piston engine, and it's not gear driven, and it's not a radial. It's pretty much the same thing. And I've been trained to do that. I just need to have the proper tools, the proper manuals, and everything else. So as long as you've got that, then I would say, yeah, it's what you're here to do. But you're going to have Phil. And Phil's going to have you take apart a bunch of turbine engines and do like an oral and put them back together and then move them on the next group. Can you overhaul a turbine engine? Oh, hell no. Disassembling and taking an oral is completely different, okay? These are if it's a non-working engine, you never returned it to service, you didn't do so you just got to be careful with how you do that. Yeah.
So you're saying you need the experience. Is that
Yep.
something that you would log somewhere, or is it just kind of?
Canadians log it, we don't.
Okay.
Someday I think they might start that.
So is it really just you saying, yeah, I can do it? Or it's like, you have to know within yourself that you can do it, but is there anybody really stopping you besides yourself?
No.
So it is just purely, I know within myself I feel comfortable to do this.
Okay, yes, but the saying goes, it's fine until it's not. Okay? And so, and again, I love the FAA, but at some point they have to be the bad guys. That's what they're paid to do. So an airplane crashes, and they come to you and they say, I'm looking at this. This airplane engine crashed because the gear failed on the back. And you did a magnetic particle inspection. Have you ever been trained to do magnetic particle inspection? And you say, yes. Yeah? And they say, show me. I need to see an employer certification. I need to see records. I need to see something that shows that you've done this before. Show me the log entry. Well, I don't have that. You didn't do it before. So when it hits the fan, because you did something you shouldn't have, and if you don't do that, then the stuff won't hit the fan. But if it does hit the fan because you did something you shouldn't, then the FAA is going to say, show me something that shows that you had proper training, knowledge, experience. And if you do have those things legitimately, it's out there. It's always out there, because we sign logbooks all the time. So at the very least, you would call your employer and go, hey, remember I used to work for you? Well, yeah, I was doing some, this inspection. Remember how I used to do it for you? And they're like, yeah, I used to do it all the time. Well, can you write a letter? Yeah, I'll write a letter. So that's like, yeah, you never did that. And then you're in trouble. So.
Oh, that's the only way that's the only way that you have documentation that you perform that operation or that procedure.
Yeah.
Oh,
If you guys want to start a logbook, I would encourage it. I never did. I kind of wish I would have. Even as a pilot, I'm terrible at logging my hours because I'm just a private pilot. I'm like, hey, who cares? Who cares if I got 100 or 500? Well, I found out the insurance company cares, but you know, airplanes have to have their maintenance logged. You don't have to. But save your certificates, save your training, save your, write a little logbook. Yeah, today I did this. Or, what's that?
Doesn't hurt to have any of that stuff.
Nah, it never hurts. Never hurts. Okay, well, where am I here? Let's see. Nope, I don't have a B. I just have a 2. All right, 2, safety net. Well, obviously, don't do anything you're not trained to do. Do not do anything you are not trained to do. You are not, I'm going to scroll up, trained to do. Now that was easier to write than it is in reality. This industry is a very macho industry, and there's not a lot of us who would get a call and say, hey Kevin, can you overhaul my pressure carburetor? I'd love to. I just don't have any experience doing it. Of course I would. Bring it on over. I've never seen one of these before. You got a book or something on this thing? It's
like YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody doing YouTube now. Everybody knows how to fix a car and paint a car because they go on YouTube, right? Everybody knows how to wrap a car, huh?
It's like that.
Oh shit! Where'd you get
YouTube
that?
Certified Aircraft Mechanic.
Where'd you get that? That's cool.
Right there. One of my students got that for me.
Oh wow!
I actually taped it tomorrow for an entire day.
All right.
Yep, saw it on YouTube.
Saw it on YouTube.
I.
You tell the FAA, right?
That's right. Okay. Continue to get training. Continue to get training. I'm a big proponent of the more training, the better. So you guys are here. You're going to get your A&P certificate. What comes after your A&P certificate? No, AMP. That's airframe power plant. Comes after that. What are you going to do next? I don't know. Well, let's see. You can get your associate's degree. Right? You can get your inspection authorization. Start working on your pilot's license. Who was my guy with the Embry Ribble t-shirt on a little bit ago? What do you got back there? But yeah, what are you going to get, your bachelor's?
Yeah.
All right. So, good.
What does B say? We're trying to read your handwriting.
Continue. C-O-N-T-I-N-U. Continue.
To get training.
To get training.
Oh.
I'll try and write nicer. You just got to remind me, because it's not, the later in the day it gets, the worse it gets. And I'm writing on this thing, and it's not always easy.
So where does the painting and all the body carbon fiber stuff come in, kick in?
Oh, you go get more training. You go to school. You go to get carbon fiber training. I just went. Was it last year? Last year I went and did 2 weeks of NDT training. Right?
Companies usually pay for this?
Yeah. Depends. Get a good company. Ask them. I get a lot of students who get job offers or talk about a job, have one question and one question only, which is, which starting pay? Okay. I did think outside the box. Right? Would you rather start at $30 an hour with a job that doesn't go any higher, or one that starts at $20 an hour and goes higher, plus training, plus flight benefits, plus think outside the box a little bit, guys. Don't just I keep telling them, don't focus on starting pay. What if a company says, well, we pay $2 less an hour, but tell you what we're going to do. We're going to send you to non-destructive training. Then we're going to send you to carbon fiber composite training is what it's called.
Yeah,
composite training, and then you know what? We got the special program. If you want to become a pilot, we're gonna give you pilot training, and that's worth more than $2 an hour to me. So yeah.
So does working with somebody else on a project you're unexperienced with, does that count as substantial training?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, if they came to me and said, "Where'd you learn to overhaul engines?" Oh, Right there. I was standing right here. I worked with him. Like, okay, well, where'd you learn how to work on engines? Well, I've been doing it for 50 years. Where'd you, that they stop at that. I'm okay. Well, where'd you get your experience? They don't. One time the FA played that game with me. It's hilarious. And I got to tell you. So I worked for a repair station, and it wasn't a repair station. I had to make it a repair station. So, and I have great time with the FAA guys. They have a great sense of humor, and they screw with you. And I appreciate that. Like, I have an inspection authorization, and I gave it up for a while because I didn't think I was going to need it. Then I had to get it back. But back in the day when I first got it, this is a long time ago, and I'll tell you how long, you'll figure it out in a minute. They made you take the test at the local FA office. And what you do is you'd make an appointment to take, I want to be an IA. All right, show up next week at 9 a.m. And you would go to the office, and you'd see an inspector, and you would do whatever they wanted you to do, for however long they wanted you to do it. Here's a helicopter serial number. Look up the airworthiness directives on these blades and assume that, and it's just these complex, scenarios, and you have to figure out when some inspection was due and this and that. But the fun part was, this is before the day of computer. And it was back with microfiche. You guys know what microfiche is? Okay, so microfiche is, it would be a card about yay big with printing so small you couldn't see it. You'd put it in a reader, and it would show up on a screen. Yeah. All right? Now, these readers weighed about 150 pounds. And so one of the things to be an inspection author, an IA, is you had to prove that you had a library. You had to pay for this library because it wasn't online. And the library is expensive. Well, my company paid for the library. So he said, make sure you bring your library. And I said, well, the guy's name is Don. I said, Don, you've been to my shop like 100 times. You've seen the microfiche reader in the library. That's not what the requirement says, Kevin. It says you need to bring in your proof that you have. I said, well, so can I bring in the microfiche? He goes, and the reader. So I had to literally bring a truck and carry this stupid thing in, and all the microfiche books. Where do you want it? He's like, oh, it's on the floor there. You can use our stuff. Like, so you just mess with me a little bit. Come on in. But anyway, the story I was going to tell you is about how the FAA came into my shop one day. It was just a routine inspection. I do them all the time. And he says, it was funny. He starts off with, Kevin, did you hear about the new FAA motto? And I said, no, what is the new FAA motto? He goes, we're not happy until you're not happy. And then they started in. And yeah, it was a big joke. They laughed. And but anyway, there was this machine that we used to test magnetos, and you guys will do the same thing. And magnetos have to work at a certain RPM, right, according to the book. So you put the magneto on the stand, and you run it at the slowest possible speed. It has to work before it hits 150 RPM. So one of my guys happens to be doing a magneto. He puts it on the bench, starts it up, and it's firing. It's ticking on the bench and firing across all the gaps. And the FA goes, and so what are you doing? So we're checking. It's called the coming in speed. And he goes, and it's supposed to be. I said, well, less than 150. He goes, mm-hmm. How do you know that tachometer's accurate? I said, I am glad you asked that, because not more than a few days ago, we asked ourselves the same question. And we have this handheld tach checker, which they're made to hold up next to a propeller, and it measures the impulses of the propeller going by with the light flashing through, and it tells you exactly how fast the propeller is going, so you can check the accuracy of the tachometer. So using a flashlight and some tape and stuff, we rigged this thing up, and we were able to determine exactly how off the tachometer was, and we had a little correction chart. And they were very impressed with that, and he said, now, how do you know that handheld checker was accurate? I'm glad you asked that question, because we asked ourselves that very question. And according to the little instruction booklet inside, it says, hold it up to a fluorescent light, and because of the fluorescent light is actually flashing at a rate that we can't tell, but this can, it will say exactly, and I forget what number it is, 360 I think it is, and we know that it's accurate. And so that's a great question. That's a great thing, Kevin. How do you know that those are... I said, oh, come on, man. Division of the weight and measure's got to come in here somewhere. And he laughed. He goes, yeah, I know. You're fine. So, all right. Let's see. Where are we here? Safety net for something. Continue to get training. Use the manual. Use the manual. You can read that, huh? Students like to tease us all the time. We allow it. So I was asking some. They were. Well, then get a seat closer. So use the manual. Use the dang manual. All right. Yeah, it looks like Maxwell, whatever. Remember, you give me too much grief and I just put the pen away and start talking. You get to figure out what to write. It's easier on me, trust me. All right, so, yeah, I don't know. Students were making fun of one of the instructors, and they you know, what do you call it, imitating him. I said, all right, now do me. And I said, it's all right, you can do it. And it's in the manual, man. So apparently I say that a lot. All right. Ask for help from qualified. I'm going to underline qualified people. Don't assume just because somebody is in some sort of position that they know what they're doing, that they got there. So I'm going to use us as an example, just not to pick on anybody, but it's just the one that came to mind. So you guys, you're stuck. You don't know how to do something. How, I don't know, trying to think of something. You don't know how to time a magneto at engine. So you're like, well, you know what? I'm going to go ask the tool room guy. Well, okay. So James does have an A&P, so that's why it's kind of a bad thing. But in most places, the person who works in the tool room, they don't have experience out in the field. So you as the A&P working out on the floor, should you go to the guy in the tool room and ask the guy in the tool room exactly how to do your job? There's a reason why they're in the tool room and not out on the floor. Okay? Maybe they've been there for 30 or 40 years. Doesn't mean they know what they're doing. So that is not a qualified person. So think before you ask somebody, is this person really qualified? Do I know that they're qualified? All right? When I first started in the industry, I didn't know a whole lot. Yeah, I graduated from here, got out in the field. I would be working with somebody. I don't know how to do this, man. And the things that they would tell me that I would later realize was just, oh my gosh, that was just, it couldn't get any more wrong than what we did, But it's like, well, that's the way we always do it here. It's the way it's always been. So that wasn't a qualified person. So who is a qualified person? Just because they have an A&P does not mean they're qualified.
Someone that's been trained on that.
Someone's been trained. So if I have a problem, I'm having a problem with my airplane. I don't know what to do. I'm having trouble. I can't get the flaps to retract, or I can't rig them properly. It's just driving me nuts. Who do I call? Who do I ask? Tech rep. I wrote tech, so tech reps. Tech reps are great. Maybe not so much Cessna because they're Cessna. But more modern aircraft, working on a Boeing, I call Boeing. Not if you're working on a Boeing Stearman, because they were made in the 40s. If I'm working on a Lycoming engine, I'm going to call Lycoming. All right? But be prepared. Don't be an idiot when you call them, because it's really embarrassing when they say, all right, so you're having problems with this engine. So tell me, what model number and serial number it is? Yeah, I don't know. I'll call you back. Call them back. All right, what model serial number is it? You tell them model and serial number. Okay, and so your problem is, you tell them the problem. Have you read Service Instruction 1642 Bravo yet? Because it explains your problem in detail and the corrective action. No, I haven't read that yet. Well, how come you don't read the service bulletins? Yeah, I don't know. So, don't let that be you. All right, senior. I'll put senior mechanics. Which is to say somebody who's been doing it at least longer than you have, maybe, or... Well, that doesn't necessarily mean, I guess I'm a senior mechanic. I don't know everything, and I wouldn't be ashamed to ask somebody who'd been doing it less than me if they had experience in that, because one thing that is great about this job is I have a lot of students who have graduated this program, gone out to work on something, and know more than I do about something within the first 3 weeks, and I think that is cool, and I love it. We've got one guy in particular who just got hired on at United, and he stops by all the time. And he just loves talking to students, and he's really starting to know his stuff. He's already forgotten more about Boeings than I've ever known. So, that's cool. We've got an entire portion of one class went to work down the way on the P3, the P3 Orions. Yeah, the fireplanes. They had a whole crew down there working. Those guys, they know everything about that plane. I don't know nothing about that plane. So, I think that's really cool. All right, distractions is another one. Distractions. Sometimes I write in all caps and it doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about it. What do we got for distractions here? Distractions. That's not it. Distraction. Oh, hey, your wife is on the phone. That's what it says right there. Ah, okay. Let's see. Yeah. An example of a distraction happened to a group who supports missionaries in the bush with radios and aircraft. One day they were maintaining a Piper Aztec in Papua New Guinea. The scheduled maintenance that day was a 100-hour inspection. Now, it's called a 100-hour inspection, not because that's how long it takes you, but an aircraft that flies for hire has to be inspected every 100 hours of operation. It's the same thing as an annual inspection. It's just done every 100 hours. Oil change, take apart the inspection panels, pull out the seats. It's rather extensive. So anyway, they're doing the inspection. 4 mechanics were working together to accomplish the task. One of the mechanics was reconnecting the fuel hose on the right engine after inspecting the fuel servo finger screen, something you guys are going to learn all about. One of the other mechanics was having trouble timing a magneto left engine and asked for help. He quickly finger tightened the fuel hose and began helping to install the magneto. Again, I just stop right there, and if you pay attention to this. I have personally been involved in NTSB accidents where people have died because of loose hoses. You want to talk about one thing that just really just gets, I don't know, me freaked out is hoses. When I bought my airplane, I would not fly in it until I personally put a wrench on every single hose. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to check the hose. I didn't check the oil. It's got oil. Now I have to check. I check the hoses because a hose that has been put on finger tight looks exactly like a hose that has been put on with a wrench. There is zero difference in the way they look. And a hose that is put on my hand tight won't leak for a few minutes. Back to this. So I live in fear of that. I don't ever turn my back on a hose. And when I do put a hose on, I tighten it and I use this stuff called torque stripe. And it's actually like a lacquer paint that comes in a little tiny tube. What's a tube like? Why are you laughing?
Oh, I just remember that.
Because she knows me. And but it's this little lacquer paint, and if you've seen it on movement rides and stuff like that, it's you just put it on the part, and if the part spins, then that lacquer paint is misaligned, and you can see it. That's not the point. The point is the paint tells me that I was there, and I torqued it. So I torque it, tight it, put the paint on. That one, I won't even. If somebody interrupts me in a hose, I'll take it all the way off, just leave it dangling. What can I do for you? Anyway, so that's what happened. Finger tight, and then he forgot the fuel line was loose. The inspection was completed, and the aircraft was dispatched to haul freight and passengers. The aircraft had completed 2 legs of its first flight, and he had taken off on its 3rd leg when the right engine burst into flames. You do not want to fire in flight. The passengers and the pilot were killed. The NTSB one that I was on was, so I don't know what happened to exactly the thing. I heard the guy didn't die, but it was pretty bad. And so the FAA and the NTSB sent the engine to me. And my task was, and they're very specific about this, don't mess with anything. You take the engine as given to you, you put it on the test stand, you prepare it to run, and you step away. And when they get there with all of the attorneys, and I mean, attorneys will fill half this room. So you're sitting there and you've got the NTSB, you got the FAA, and you got several NTSB, you got several FAA, and you've got an entire gaggle of lawyers, and they're all standing around at this point, and they say, okay, we are going to start this engine up. Kevin, start the engine up. And I went to that engine, I started up, it ran beautifully. I didn't know anything about the engine, it just ran really well. It was probably the same engine on here, fuel injected, 200 horsepower, 4-cylinder, it's 360 cubic inch engine. And so I start this thing up, and it's called a test club, it's not a propeller. It's a prop that's only about like that big in diameter, 4 blades, and it's made to absorb all 200 horsepower in a section like this big. So it moves a lot of air right next to the engine, but no thrust. So I start this thing up, I run it, and I take it up to full power. It's just got little straight stacks. I mean, 200 horsepower, and you're standing next to the straight stacks. It's loud, it's obnoxious, it's really moving. I mean, you'd think it's 1,000,000 horsepower. And anyway, they have me shut it down. They say, okay, here's what happened. Upon takeoff, the pilot lost power, and there was I guess there wasn't a fire because the engine would have looked like it, but the pilot lost power and landed and crashed. So the hypothesis was they found the fuel hose that goes up to the manifold that goes out to the 4 cylinders, that fuel hose was disconnected. So obviously the engine ran up to the taxi area, did a pre-flight run-up, without any problem, and then it took off and then lost power. So what happened? So their theory was that he'd put the hose on, finger tight, and it had backed itself off. So I said, so we have proof of concept. Let's see what happens. So we did. The story got kind of funny because the NTSB guy said, I want you to run it up to full power, and then I want you to climb up on that engine, and I want you to back off that nut with the wrench, and we're going to see what happens. I said, there's no way I can even, that's not physically possible to go that horsepower with the prop here, with the thing here, to even get into that wash. I said, I can't. And he called me a few names and questioned my manhood and told me to run it to full power and give me a wrench. So I gave him a wrench. Now, I will never forget this sight in my head, hopefully as long as I live. He had a pocket, his cigarettes and his sunglasses and his, I don't know, everything. And he got that wrench and he took one step inside that prop wash, and he blew this way, and everything in his pocket was just gone. I never saw it again. Pull the power off. What's the matter? What's up? I said, okay, never mind. Plan B. Let's loosen it up, put it on finger tight, start it up, and then see what happens. So we did that, which more, represents what happened. So I ran it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, ran it up some more. That thing, not a single problem. He said, all right, go ahead and take it to max power, like takeoff. Brought it to max power. It lasted no more than 5 seconds. I saw that nut just go around like that, and the hose just went like that. We repeated it over and over and over. I run it as long as I want to at medium power. The minute I hit full power, done. That thing came off and went. So, anyway. Distractions. Distractions. Yeah, we got a few minutes left. Distractions. Loss of focus. Mental or emotional confusion. Or disturbance. That draws one's attention away. Draws one's attention away. What do you think is the biggest number one cause of distractions these days? Phones. So what's the solution?
Stay off your phone.
How do you do that?
Leave it at home. Leave it in the car.
Well, when I started in the industry, we didn't have cell phones, didn't have computers. So it wasn't that much of a problem. Then when I got a phone, it became a problem. So, sorry about to sneeze here. So my solution was I have a drawer in my toolbox, and my phone goes on silent. Not on vibrate, on silent, off, in my drawer. Put it away. I will look at it when I have time. There is absolutely nobody who is going to have a crisis that is so important that it's going to cause me to kill whoever's getting in that airplane.
Can you come to our shop and repeat that last couple of sentences?
And I figure, well, what if there's a crisis? What if my wife needs to get hold of me? One of the kids get hurt? Well, there's always Katie who doesn't turn her phone off.
Yeah.
Draws one's attention away.
Yeah, it draws one's attention away.
So is it really that big of a problem?
It's a huge problem. It's
Oh,
a
it
huge.
is?
Any distraction, distractions have always been a huge thing.
So where does the multitasking come in?
We don't multitask in aviation. You
Oh,
don't.
there isn't.
You don't. Okay, so I say you don't, but it depends. Like when I worked in the machine shop, yeah, I did multitask.
Correct, right? And,
Okay.
in the machine shop, you're doing, I'm running maybe 7 different machines.
Yeah.
I'm calibrating 7 different machines.
Yeah.
With probably a total of 100 different toolings.
Right.
At the same time. know
Okay,
what I
but you
mean?
got to have a check and balance ends. Like for me, I'm doing a line of cylinders. I got 2 cylinders in the oven. I got 2 more cooling, and this one over here, I'm reaming the exhaust guides. Okay, I don't care about those heating because they're on thermostats and they're going to be fine. I don't care about those cooling because they're not going to get too cold. I'm going to focus on this one right here.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to do this one to the best of my ability. When this one's done, I'm going to set it aside. Now my attention's going to go to what's next. Okay, those two are in the cooler. They can come out and I can start machining those. Those two in the oven are ready to come out, and, you know, something like that. So, but, you know, I'm doing an inspection on an airplane. I don't multitask. There's no multitasking. It just isn't. If I'm putting spark plugs in, I'm putting spark plugs in right now. I don't bother. I'm putting spark plugs in. You know, I can't do that and inspect the wing at the same time. So, put the phone away. Finish the job. Finish the job before you walk away. Before you walk away. This one guy I worked with, his name was Smitty. He was a pretty cool guy. He had some weird ways of doing things. He was a super nice guy. Oh, funny. Smitty's rule. Sorry, this was a story that came to my mind. I looked down at my notes, and I actually wrote this. Smitty's. So I'm giving credit where credit is due. And we were working together, and I was pretty new, and we were going to put an engine, or we did, we put an engine on the front of an airplane. And Smitty was just one of these really nice guys, and nothing really ever irritated him. You knew Smitty real well, didn't you? And he got real mad at me, and I hadn't done anything yet. And he just looked at me and says, I'm going to tell you something right now. He says, you work with me, you do something in that engine, you put it on all the way, the right way, and finish it. If it needs a safety, use safety. He's getting madder, and I'm like, I haven't done anything yet. If it needs a safety, use safety. I don't care if you're going to take it off. In 2 minutes from now, you finish it. And then if you decide you want to take it off, you take it off. And I said, oh, yes, sir. And he's right. You know, we didn't have any problems. So you put something, you finish it. And what he was worried about is that I would be doing like maybe exhaust, and I would get all the exhaust nuts on and go, I think, okay, well, this exhaust is on this way. Maybe I'll go the other side and just put the nuts and stuff on. Then I'll go get my torque wrench and torque all the nuts. Nope, you're going to be on that side. You're going to put the exhaust on the right side of the engine. You finish the exhaust on the right side of the engine. You know, what if I take it off later? I don't care. So that's why I call it Smitty's rule. So always finish. Always finish, or I'm going to say always.
Finish what you start.
Yeah. He said always fully install, even if you intend to take it off later. Because sometimes you don't. You get to a point where like, hey, I don't need to take that off. And you didn't finish it, even if you, or somebody else doesn't know that it wasn't finished.
I have a lot of trailers on my property. And the rule is if you're gonna put the trailer on the ball, finish hooking everything up, because I've gotten to work and all the chains and the power cable are dragging on the ground.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we had a Mastercraft, and I didn't connect it to the... And I hit the railroad tracks, and I look back, and the Mastercraft is no longer behind the truck. Tag unairworthy items. So in other words, hang a tag. Big old obvious tag. This is not completed. This is not done. Something that nobody can miss. Like, hey, I've taken the screws out of the top of the horizontal stabilizer. Big old tag that everybody can see. And this is something pilots do a lot. Go back 3 steps. So when you're doing a pre-flight check on your aircraft, and you have a list of things to do, and you get to a certain spot, and then your phone rings, like, yeah, phone rings, you know, it's Katie, and she's calling, what does she want? Yeah, Katie posts something on Instagram, got to look. When you do that, wherever you were, you need to go back 3 steps and start all over again at 3 steps. So go back 3 and go forward. So you get to 1, you go, okay, this was done properly, this was done properly, and this is where I left off. Got it. All right, so you can make sure. All right. So that is going to take care of what we're going to talk about tonight. Oh, wait a minute. One more point. It's on the next page. Use a checklist. Use a checklist. Can't go wrong if you use a checklist. Of course, you should be using a manual, but manuals don't always have checklists. So tomorrow, well, tonight, you're going to clock out here. And tomorrow, let's see, I think, well, you're going to clock in at least in the lecture and all this, lab across the street. You're going to clock in over there, and I'll let you know if we're going to be over there or over here. So as I like to say, don't go away mad, just go away.